Jesus was led up to the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. What a great way to start the lessons today, isn't it? Tempted by the devil for 40 days. This passage is one of the reasons for us that Lent is 40 days. Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Lent is 40 days and 40 nights long. But 40 is a common number used in Scripture. Moses also went to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, fasting without food or water before God gave him the 10 Commandments that we said this morning in Exodus. The prophet Elijah fasted and prayed for 40 days and 40 nights in the first book of the Kings. Noah and his family waited out the rain that fell for 40 days and 40 nights as the world was flooded in Genesis. And the Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years before they reached the promised land, also in the book of Exodus. And Jesus stayed with his disciples for 40 days following his resurrection from the dead before the day of the ascension. Now we get to be confused a little bit. Or if we want to think of ourselves as good Episcopalians, then we get to do some critical thinking. We say that Lent is 40 days long, but there are actually 46 days between Ash Wednesday and Easter Day. Now, some of us have been taught that this means that the Sundays during Lent are Sundays in Lent and not Sundays of Lent, and that Sundays don't count toward the total. But if we look at our Book of Common Prayer on pages 31 and 32, we'll notice some ambiguity. It almost seems to insinuate that Lent is the 40 days going from Ash Wednesday until Palm Sunday, and then that Holy Week is its own season. So which is it? And the answer is we don't get too hung up in the details. What works best for you? What makes the most sense to you? Historically, Anglicans have thought of it the first way. Why is it different in our prayer book? I don't know. But it also isn't something that I'm willing to lose sleep over. But some of us Christians do lose sleep over something we heard about in the story of Jesus being tempted in the desert. The devil. When you hear about the devil, what do you think of? Do you think of some guy in red tights with hooves and horns and a tail and a pitchfork? Because that's what a lot of people picture when they think of the devil. But that actually comes from a Disney movie, Fantasia from 1940. That depiction isn't that old. Less than 100 years. Like how Santa Claus started wearing his trademark red suit and hat in a Coca-Cola commercial, but before that was depicted as the Bishop of Myra. And what about throughout history? Imagery for the devil has been a serpent, like we heard about in the Genesis story this morning, or a particularly hairy and ugly man, a beast influenced by Norse mythology, with bat-like wings, or even to the shape-shifting main character in John Milton's Paradise Lost. But these are all relatively new depictions of the devil or Satan. We sometimes call him Satan. So what does it all mean to us? Well, the English word devil comes from the Latin diablo, which comes from the Greek diabolos. Think of diabolical, or even the word evil, which is the word devil without the first letter. And the Greek diabolos is a translation of the Hebrew satan, and it means an adversary or an accuser. And it was translated in the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible, as diabolos. So in English, Satan and the devil are interchangeable words. They simply come from different origins. And as we see in our passage, a story that always pops up on the first Sunday in Lent, the devil or the adversary or the accuser tempts Jesus in the desert. And we use that as our model for how we observe Lent. Eventually that morphed into our practice of fasting during Lent. And for how long do we fast? For 40 days, just like Jesus did. Now, we've already talked about that number, 40, and how it keeps popping up in Scripture. But why? Remember, we have to take historical context into consideration when we study Scripture. Well, 40 in its historical content means a lot. In the customs and times of Jesus and before, 40 days just meant a substantial amount of time. It most likely did not mean exactly 40. It meant Jesus fasted in the desert for a long time. And when he fasted, did he completely abstain from food? Doubtful. Doubtful, especially if he didn't have any water. In the 21st century, a healthy adult person can survive for anywhere from about 3 to 8 weeks without any food. But that depends on other factors. Because the body dips into fat and muscle stores, a larger person could potentially live longer without food than a smaller person. But without water, especially in the desert, survival is only for a few days maximum. So Jesus likely spent a significant amount of time in the desert, and he likely fasted by eating only the food that he might forage for himself in his surroundings. So hopefully that makes us feel a little better about our own fast. We don't need to fast as a way of depriving ourselves. We need to fast as a means of enhancing our awareness of the ways that we experience God and human relationships in our lives. There's no wrong way to fast during Lent, provided we are making efforts to become closer to God and to one another. Now, if you were with us here on Ash Wednesday, then you heard me talk about a community fast that I've invited our whole parish to participate in. It's a fast in favor of kindness. Little did I know it at the time, but I was far from the only preacher on Ash Wednesday who called for a community-wide fast from unkindness. Even Pope Leo XIV preached about the importance of fasting from unkindness during Lent. And believe it or not, Pope Leo and I didn't have a conversation before Ash Wednesday. I'm not on the Pope's speed dial, and he's not on mine, and I'm sure if he were, he would screen his calls. So what does that tell us? If clergy around the world are encouraging a fast from unkindness, as far as I can tell, it tells us that the faithful people of God are probably tired. We're exhausted. And when we're exhausted, we regress. So what's the devil in this case? The diabolos, the Satan, the adversary, the accuser, the tempter. I'll name what I think it is. Negativity. Negativity. Dwelling in negativity is a potential adversary. It is so easy to become sucked into negativity and drama. And it's so easy to ignore 1,000 wonderful things, to poke the negative one. It's much easier to ignore the good things when it seems to be hidden by bad things. Are we really able to see the beautiful rose if that rose is in the midst of the thorns surrounding it? You know, years ago when I lived in Utah, I worked with a Latter-day Saint woman named Virginia. And Virginia loved the LDS thrift shop, the Deseret Industries, or the DI as we called it. And I hated the DI. I hated the DI. Why? Well, because there's never any good stuff there. But Virginia told me I was doing it wrong. She said, yes, if you walk into the DI, you're going to see a lot of junk. But that's only because it's the easiest thing to see. You have to look at each item on its own. You have to single it out. And then you have to realize that it's actually a pretty good item, and maybe the other items next to it seem less appealing. And you know something? She was right. She was right. I found some great deals at the DI. I found a baseball one time, autographed by Tony Gwynn, my favorite baseball player from when I was a kid. And it's real. I've had it verified. I found Bose speakers at the DI. I found Calvin Klein jeans. I found Ren Spooner Aloha shirts. I found tailor-made golf clubs. I found Florsheim shoes. I found Ralph Lauren polo shirts, Tommy Bahama shirts, an autographed photo of Jim Henson with the Fraggles, a Notre Dame football jersey, name it. But I wouldn't have found any of that if I had just gone in there and seen the chaos of the room. If I'd have allowed myself to look only at the junk, to look only at the things that I didn't like. And in a minefield of junk, I have some absolute treasures. So I'm going to challenge us this Lenten season and hopefully beyond to continue to look for the treasures. It's easy to see things we don't particularly care for or the things we might like to see better. It's easy for a baseball team to say that the pitcher made a huge mistake by giving up a home run late in the game. But what about all the strikes that he probably threw before that? What about the no-hitter he was pitching before that moment? That's pretty impressive if we think about it. We have a change of our attitude here. I like that. We are witnessing it in real time. This is good. And with 162 games all season, even a loss doesn't have to be devastating. There's very likely much that pitcher and the team can learn going forward, but only if they're looking for the good, avoiding the adversaries, the satans, the diablos. There's so much goodness in the world. There's so much goodness in Arizona. There's so much goodness in our community. And I, for one, hope that we all are able to focus on goodness, even if we find ourselves like Jesus in a place of wilderness. Because sure, the wilderness might have some dangerous creatures. Here in Arizona, the wilderness has snakes and scorpions and coyotes and bobcats, but it also has flowers and pretty rocks and even an occasional waterfall, depending on the time of year. Not to mention glorious views. Have you ever been to the top of Camelback? Or have you ever been to the top of Piestewa? Because the views from up there are incredible. Even though to get to the summit of Camelback, you have to go through an area that's inhabited by bees. I'm hopeful that we can continue this walk together in this first full week of Lent and focus together on kindness and positivity. Kindness, after all, is a crucial piece of our baptismal covenant, and unkindness isn't something that is tolerated in this space. St. John's is a safe space where people can count on kindness being the expected norm. And if we notice kindness, let's encourage more of it. And if we notice unkindness, then let's make a gentle nudge to discourage it. St. John's is a great church, and we're doing a lot, more than many churches. And in fact, more than most. There's a lot of goodness in this place. If we're looking for things we don't like, I'm sure we can find some. But why would we waste our time doing that? Those are adversaries, diablos, devils, especially when goodness is everywhere. In the movie Rudy, in a time of feeling discouraged, the title character has a conversation with the head groundskeeper. His name's Fortune, and Fortune tells Rudy, "You're 5'0" 100 and nothing, and you've got not a speck of athletic ability. And you hung in with the best college football team in the land for 2 years. And you're also going to walk out of here with a degree from the University of Notre Dame. In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself. And after what you've gone through, if you haven't done that by now, it ain't going to never happen. Now go on back. St. John's is the unexpected hero in this diocese. Located in the western part of the Phoenix Valley, this isn't where people might expect to see a parish as vibrant and as active as ours. And like Rudy, we don't need to prove anything to anyone. We've already won, and we're going to continue to win. Together, let's work to escape the wilderness and to avoid the devil. We are good, and we will continue to bring goodness and kindness to Arizona and to the world.